I imagine that you're going to translate this. So I think we should start with a discussion about how we're going to translate this. Because the problem is that I wrote this book in French first, and then I translated it into English. But consentement and consent don't have an exact translation into German. So it's been translated in German by Zustimmung and Einvernehmlichkeit, but I think in the 2 or 3 years since the translation, it's become more and more common to just say consent in German. So I'm just really gonna address consent. So what I find very important with consent is that it is both a concept that takes into account the fact that things have changed in our representations of sexuality, and that we now think that what makes a sexual relationship acceptable and permissible is the fact that the people involved agreed to have this sexual relationship. But at the same time, it is a concept that really carries sexist imaginary. What is really important is that in Zustimmung, in German, so Zustimmung is a better concept to show this, and in consentement in French, you also have all this imaginary that it is acceptance and not an actual choice of something. And that the idea is still a model in which the men propose something to women, and women have to accept it or refuse it. And it also carries this sort of imaginary that for men, sex or rape are more or less the same, but that what makes the difference is the reaction of the woman. And I wanted to build a philosophical analysis to try to see how we can keep the positive aspects of the concept of consent, to identify the negative aspect, to build a general theory that will be emancipatory. So of course, if you grew up watching James Bond, for instance, or Indiana Jones, and you saw all these real heroes that pushed a woman against the wall and kissed them, and the woman would say, "No, James, no," and then they would be so happy that James pushed and forced them. So we have all experienced these gender stereotypes in which men are active, in which men are concurring, and the women are supposed to be passive, and in the end, the only thing they want from men is to be captured and conquered. So these kind of things affect the way we are able to choose our sexualities or not. But there are many other things. So my first book was about submission, Unterwerfung. And what I tried to show in there is that the central gender norm for women is a norm of submission, that we tend to think femininity and submissiveness as equal. And therefore, women are raised and educated and socialized to always be nice, smile, say yes, take care of other people's feelings, and so on and so forth. But imagine what it means in the sexual realm. If your entire life is about making sure people are happy, putting people's happiness before yours, etc., are you going to be able to choose the kind of sex you want to have? Do you even know what you want to have sexually, or are you just used to doing what you're suggested to do? We have myths about sexuality that really structure the way we think and we act sexually. I talk about these 3 myths in particular in my book. So the first one being that men always want sex, no matter what. The second is that women actually don't really want sex, they want love. And the third one is that sex is heterosexual penetration that ends with the male physical orgasm. And these 3 myths are important because they're all wrong, obviously. So it happens that men actually don't want to have sex, that women actually really want to have sex, and there are many other forms of sex. And even this form of sex, the penetrative heterosexual sex, the myth we have about how it should be is, we know now with sexology and physiological studies, something that cannot give pleasure to most women. All of this shapes the way we think about sexuality and shapes what we do and it's based on wrong things. So this is really a problem. So what was very interesting for me in the Pellico trial is that the judges and the prosecutors, etc., were working from a definition of consent that was very close to mine, that was very progressive, very feminist. It also happened that my work was cited several times in the trial, and so I felt like from a legal point of view, what was going on pretty well. But the accused and their lawyers proposed visions of what consent is that come from not even the 19th century. One of the guys said, for instance, it was his house, his room, his bed, his wife. And so the meaning of this sentence is that, in a way, Dominique Pellico owned his wife the same way he owned his house, his room, and his bed. And so if he had given these men permission to have sex with her or to rape her, it meant that it couldn't be rape because they had the permission of the rightful owner of that body. So all these sort of views that a husband could give the consent of his wife showed really where progress needs to be made. There is a history of the idea that once you're married, the man owns the body of his wife, owns his wife in general. That's the reason why for the longest time women couldn't have bank accounts, couldn't have a driver's license before their husband agreed, and so on and so forth. But it's been at least 150 years that it's not the case anymore, at least that men legally possess their wives. So that also shows that the ideology of patriarchy is still deeply rooted to the point that people can say these kind of things. That being said, it's very important to recognize that these guys knew that what they were doing was not allowed. So they pleaded all of this in the trial, but you see in the videos that the moment that Gisèle Pellico moves even by 1 centimeter, they're ready to run away and they're terrified. So they knew that she would have never agreed and it was absolutely forbidden. So I do think that educating kids to consent is an extremely important step. But even broader than for sex, just for living in society. Like for instance, when I grew up, it was normal that the friends of your parents would kiss you even if you found them really disgusting, or your grandparents, and that people would take you for things that, in a way, like you were given the feeling that your body didn't belong to you. And I see now with my kids that say, Maman, you gave me a kiss and you didn't ask first. You know that it's absolutely forbidden, and that in the kita they really learn like gestures about how to push people away, that if someone says stop, you really need to stop no matter what. Like, it gives you confidence about the fact that your body is yours and you can choose what you want to be done to your body. And that seems, of course, like the first step for anything else.